our Brazilian Grand Prix F1 driver ratings. Now, before we dive into this, we did read some of your comments from the previous one, and fair enough, we put our hands up. Maybe some things were a little bit too savage. Some things we should have maybe researched a little bit more. So we have put in place more research and more beautiful opinions ready for you with factual evidence to go alongside it. Right, let's start where we always start. Logan Sargent, Logie Bear. He started the sprint in 20th, finished 20th. Started the race in 19th, finished 11th. I have gone for a 6 out of 10 for Logan Sargent this weekend. Of course, we have difficulties now because we don't have sprint weekends every single weekend. So how much do you lean towards a sprint? Well, starting 20th and finishing 20th, you have to kind of take into account. But his race was pretty good. He wasn't too slow. He had a very unique strategy of medium and then 3 soft stints. Of course, the performance is flattered slightly by the amount of DNFs, but 17 seconds off a point. I can't give him any lower than a 6.
I can. I've gone for a 5 out of 10. Like you say, finished 11th, which seems good on paper, but then he's actually finished ahead of one car on the road. His sprint wasn't great at all, and I think maybe I'm a little bit more harsh just because for me with Logan, it's obviously great that he's now, we've gone a few races where he's not made silly errors. We're quite a way into the season now, and you think there'd be some improvement on pace rather than his only improvement being that he's not crashing in every race or making mistakes. So yeah, I think he's still a bit of work to do, which is why I imagine they're not confirming him and still umming and ahhing about that decision.
Alex Albon started the sprint in 19th, finished 15th, started the race in 13th and did not finish.
Gone for a 6 out of 10 for Alex Albon. Probably one of his worst weekends. Of course, he was unlucky to be involved in that crash, which was very much a racing incident. We've seen it a lot in the midfield this year where 3 very wide, what they are now, Formula One cars on a thin, old school track trying to go into turn 1 ends up in a crash. I think, the sprint, his qualifying wasn't great. And then, of course, in the main qualifying as well, another track limits thing. Like, how many more of them is he going to get? In a great season that Albon's had, I think this is one of his weaker weekends.
I've gone for a 6 out of 10 as well for Alex. I was dilly-dallying between a 5 and a 6 because it's very difficult to really judge a race that he hasn't taken part in. But putting 4 tenths on your teammate, he was incredibly lucky to be involved in that crash. So I feel like we have to put a little bit of a nod to the fact that he was still doing a lot better in that car than Logan was. Daniel Ricciardo started the sprint in 8th, finished 9th, started the race in 17th, finished 13th. Oh, this is so difficult to grade, but I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Daniel. I don't know why him and Oscar were a lap down. I still don't understand it. Their whole race was done at the beginning. They were praying for a safety car. It never came. But from what you could see, Daniel seemed like he had good pace. It's weird to think that, he was literally just racing against Piastri. It was like Formula 1.5, quite literally, where it was a two-car race against Piastri. Yeah, I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10 because he had a very solid qualifying for the sprint and just missed out on a point there. So I'm going to give him a 6.
I've also gone for a 6 out of 10 for Daniel Ricciardo. Yeah, extremely unlucky because his pace was actually good. He's running behind Yuki at one point. So you got to think that if he'd have been allowed to race, not had that contact, he might have gone through the field as well that Yuki did, which we'll never know. God, it does feel like a what might have been weekend for Ricciardo as well because they did actually have some very good pace. And if Ricciardo was in the mix as well and they didn't have the problems, they could be right up there with Williams now in the constructors.
Yuki Tsunoda started the sprint in 6th, finished 6th. Started the race in 16th, finished 9th.
Gone for a 9 out of 10 for Yuki Tsunoda. I think it was a brilliant set of results, really. Massive for a team like AlphaTauri that haven't scored many points. The main race, the reason it's not a 10 for me is because he didn't qualify great, but he came through the field and did a good job. And his sprint in particular was absolutely superb. And AlphaTauri to start 6th and finish 6th, I thought he'd fall back through the field. He was mixing up with the Ferraris and the Mercedes, which was very impressive. So a very, very good drive from Yuki. And like I said earlier, like AlphaTauri, they're coming for Williams.
I've gone for a 9 out of 10 for Yuki Tsunoda. I thought it was a sensational weekend for him. There were a few mistakes in there. Of course, knocked out in Q1 on Friday. Of course, had a great sprint qualifying and a great sprint race. He made a mistake in the race as well, which gave position to Bottas. Lost about 5 seconds, I think, with that. And that actually might have been the difference between him fighting Hamilton at the end, had he not made that mistake. Nico Hülkenberg started the sprint in 12th, finished 18th. Started the race in 11th, finished 12th. I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Nico Hülkenberg. That has, oh my God, what are they doing? They're 10th in the Constructors. They have no race pace. Their new car hasn't done anything, really. It hasn't had that leap forward that we were all sort of hoping for their sake. The strategy for Nico was soft, medium, soft, 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 which is an interesting strategy. His qualifying was great, as it always is. Pretty much utilising most of what that Haas can offer. It's just, I'd love to give him more than a 6, because I'm sure he's driving a great race, but he always falls.
Yeah, I've also gone for a 6 out of 10. Hülkenberg can do whatever he likes in qualifying, do amazing things, but he's just going to be absolutely nowhere in the race, and that's exactly what happened again. So 6 out of 10.
Kevin Magnussen started the sprint in 11th, finished 16th, started the race in 12th, did not finish.
Gone for a 5 out of 10 for K-Mag, just one lower than his teammate. I do think it was a racing incident. If I had to blame anyone, like you say, I think it is Magnussen for moving over. But it wasn't the usual kind of moving over craziness where he's made a huge move. He maybe should have just been a little bit more aware that there's people, to the side of him in his mirrors, but it's not absolutely awful. So it's quite hard to judge him, really. So I've gone for a 5 out of 10, the old classic Haas score of what are they even doing? I don't know.
I've gone for a 5 out of 10 as well for K-Mag. Just a little bit worse than Hulk over the parts that we saw. He did technically beat him in the sprint, but 16th over 18th. It's not really too much to really write home about, and then not being able to take part in the race. It's difficult, and yeah, I think if we are going to apportion a slight tiny bit of blame, it will be to K-Mag, but very much a racing incident. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for me. Lance Stroll now started the sprint in 17th, finished 12th, started the race in 3rd, finished 5th. I have gone for a whopping 9 out of 10 for Lance Stroll this weekend. The sprint, whatever, not great, but he did a fantastic job in qualifying on Friday for the Sunday race. And to finish 5th, to not be that far off Alonso either. And I'm taking a little bit into consideration here of Lance Stroll's previous performances. And he's been on a horrendous run of form. And to secure 5th place, for Aston Martin to leap back the way they have, I've been incredibly impressed with Lance Stroll as well. And you can't take that away from him.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Lance Stroll. I was so borderline between an 8 and a 9. The reason I've gone for an 8 is because the race where he was maybe even his best performance of the season, and then the sprint was very much the old Stroll where he's getting knocked out in the first part of qualifying. Yeah, he came through the pack and did all right, but there was maybe another opportunity given what pace we saw that they could have got points, and I don't really know why he was 17th, but his qualifying was brilliant to be 3rd, and then obviously dropped behind Fernando at the start, and in that little battle of Alonso and Perez, he caught them back up and not very far behind Alonso, which is exactly what he should be doing. It's a good performance from Stroll.
Yeah, very good. Well done, Lance. Fernando Alonso started the sprint in 15th, finished 11th, started the race in 4th, finished 3rd.
You'll be amazed. I've gone for a 10 out of 10 for Fernando Alonso. The sprint, he was unlucky with the Ocon crash and may have ended up with more points had he have been able to actually take part in that, because he did come through the field, was making moves in that, which was quite nice. But let's talk about his amazing race again, because I'll never get sick of it. Just amazing. I think the best bit about it was, normally in the older age of drivers, they still have those fundamental bits there, but maybe lose certain aspects. But I think we saw the fact that Alonso is still good in pretty much every area. It wasn't
is that the superlative you're going to use for Fernando Alonso? Good.
Goated in every area. Still might even be a 10 or maybe a 9 if he'd just done the defensive driving. But the fact that he then also went on the attack and showed how good his racecraft is still, catching Hamilton napping at the start, little moments like that, it just shows that he can still absolutely mix it with the very best despite being 42.
I have also gone for a 10 out of 10 for Fernando Alonso. No surprises there. I've given Lance a 9. So unbelievably impressed. I mean, it could have... I mean, just the defensive driving at the end was something that everybody that wants to be a Formula One driver or a karting or whatever just needed to write down. Just take notes. The master was in session. It's like when a coach is teaching you something in sport or whatever, and then they start doing it, and you're like, wow, that's how it's done. That was literally Fernando Alonso.
Yeah.
My God, it just makes me smile thinking about how he kept Perez at bay. And then to get him back on the last lap was just icing on the cake. It was incredible to watch. Valtteri Bottas now started the sprint at 14th, finished 19th, and started the race in 18th and did not finish. I mean, he flexed on his teammate quite aggressively in qualifying, but I mean, that was 18th over 20th. I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Valtteri. It's a difficult weekend. Of course, DNFing at the end. He was running in 12th before having that problem, which I'm not actually sure if it was ever said what that was. A poor weekend for Alfa Romeo as a whole, and 5 out of 10. It's just, my goodness me, I just want them to do better.
I've gone for I nearly was going to give him a 7, but I don't know if that's too high.
7?
He's put a lot on his teammate, and then he was going to potentially get in the points. Yeah, 6 out of 10 for Bottas. He may have got a point if it wasn't for the technical problem, but then, of course, there's not been many finishes. I do think it's very similar to Haas in the sense that, like, you never know. Like a Hulkenberg would be giving 6 all the time and whatever and being like, oh, this could be an amazing drive, but we'll never know. Like, they have fallen off so badly, and they do look genuinely like not even midfield now, just a back marker.
Zhou Guanyu started the sprint in 18th, finished 17th, started the race in 20th, did not finish.
I've gone for a 4 out of 10 for Zhou Guanyu. Yeah, his qualifying has been really poor recently, and that's what I think's let him down the most. It's so hard to know with Alfa Romeo, but there was moments where Zhou Guanyu was starting to sort of show glimpses of something really good. And it almost feels like since they signed him again, he's kind of just not really shown that spark. Yeah, he shouldn't really be qualifying dead last in an Alfa Romeo. I know it's bad, but it's not a great look. So gone for a 4.
I've also gone for a 4 out of 10 for Zhou Guanyu. Yeah, what more is there to say? You know, qualifying dead last is not what you want to be doing. And as a young driver like Zhou Guanyu, he needs to be beating Bottas every single race weekend, I would say, if he's going to start to be called up for the bigger teams, which is, of course, what all drivers dream of. But I'm not particularly impressed by Zhou Guanyu's performance this weekend, and Alfa Romeo in general, very, very difficult to judge. But yeah, I'm going to lock in a 4. Oscar Piastri started the sprint in 10th, finished 10th, started the race in 10th, finished 14th. Oh, Oscar, what's going on? Now, I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Oscar this weekend. Difficult, of course, qualifying on Friday because of the mistake he made. Difficult track conditions. Very easy to make that mistake, but of course that drops him down to 10th, so makes him a bit of a target when it comes to chaos on Sunday, which is what we saw. And then in the sprint as well, you know, he qualified 10th and Lando's on pole. That's a massive, massive difference. You know, 0.3 of a second, you might think, it's not too bad, but it's Brazil. We've made this point before. It's actually a larger deficit in terms of impact. 0.3 is big around Brazil. And then stuck a lap down, which I still don't agree with. I think it's a load of absolute BS that those two were left stranded, doing nothing for the whole race. And had damage for the whole of it. 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri. I think he's, of course, very unlucky at the start, but where has that pace gone? Maybe if he'd been like this all season, we'd have been going, oh, well, he's actually doing pretty well for a rookie. But the fact that he went through that little stage where there was so much hype around him, he was beating Lando occasionally in qualifying, and then he had that amazing thing in Qatar, and it's like, Oscar Piastri has arrived. Here he is. And then ever since then, his pace has kind of dropped off a bit. Lando's gone up another gear, and Oscar seems to have been left behind a little bit. Really hope we get to see that Piastri pace again because it's been missing for the last few races.
Lando Norris started the sprint in first, finished second. Started the race in sixth, finished second.
I have gone for a big fat whopping 10 out of 10 for Lando Norris. His sprint was sensational. Did the best he could, of course, getting on pole. And then, of course, the race, he was first in Q1, I believe, and Q2, and was looking set to challenge for pole. And then it's McLaren's blunder that's kind of made him start way down the order. And then he's literally made up for the blunder in like a split second with an incredibly brave but calculated move to get into second place from 6 on the grid. And even challenged Max at one point. Yes, it was for one lap, but Lando is driving absolutely superbly at the moment.
I've also gone for a 10 out of 10 for Lando Norris. What an amazing weekend he had, and showing that there is still very much innate raw speed in that McLaren, and with the Lando Norris combination in particular. An amazing start, as you say, just to make up the problem that McLaren caused him in one corner is unbelievable. And overall, to grab the sprint pole and then sat there going, why? It just shows he could have got a double pole this weekend just gone. And he could have maybe fought Max Verstappen had he had track position, because it wasn't a massive pace difference between the two of them. If Max is behind, at least we're going to get maybe some sort of fight. But still, Lando, it's a 10 out of 10. Very, very impressive once again. Pierre Gasly started the sprint in 13th, finished 13th, started the race in 15th, finished 7th. I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Pierre Gasly. He was out-qualified by his teammate to start 13th for the sprint race, and then in the main race started 15th. Oh no, he qualified 13th, then got a 2-place grid penalty. Sorry, that was for his impeding in Friday qualifying. He managed to gain a few positions at the restart, and he was looking aggressive, like catching Hamilton, passing him. We're like, what world are we in? Using those fresh softs to his advantage in that final stint to pass Hamilton and score some solid points for Alpine, and realistically a better weekend than his teammate Ocon had. It just seems like it's chopping and changing between Ocon and Gasly. It's like one weekend Ocon has a good weekend, then the other weekend Gasly, and I'd say they're quite finely matched in a lot of ways, these two, and as a teammate pairing. And you have to say it's quite impressive from Gasly, seeing as he's the newbie to the team.
Yeah, I've gone for a 9 out of 10 for Gasly. I think he's quietly becoming maybe the most underrated driver of the year, potentially, in terms of just, it's not really spoken about that this is maybe, the third or fourth race where he's put the Alpine into a really good position. Yeah, he finished half a minute clear of Ocon in the end. I know Ocon was on a different strategy, of course, but yeah, very, very good from Gasly, and he's certainly making, it was mine and yours prediction of biggest flop of the year look very, very washed, because he's done a very good and quiet job.
Esteban Ocon now started the sprint in 16th, finished 14th, started the race in 14th, finished 10th.
I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Esteban Ocon. I think he had a bit of a messy weekend, and he's got a point, but of course it's a point where only 12 cars finished on the lead lap, and the cars behind him is Logan Sargent and a Haas, so it makes it seem a little less impressive. And then, of course, the crash with Alonso. This doesn't affect his grade at all, but his comments afterwards and stuff, I felt personally like didn't put him in the best light, and maybe needs to kind of own up to just an error a little bit more. And I don't think he was flat out going, well, it was all Fernando's fault, but he just, he got roasted quite a lot online.
Yeah. I've also gone for a 5 out of 10 for Esteban Ocon. Did score a point, as you say. Very much flattered by the fact that it was a race of attrition. Just a poor weekend overall. Yeah, it wasn't his finest hour for Esteban, because, what's he got to gain to be kind of saying that he didn't lose the car and this, that, and the other? Like, you just got to put your hands up and say, yeah, it was a racing incident, just unfortunate. I lost the car a little bit. Alonso was there. Boom. That's it. Wasn't a massive fan of how he did that, but hey, he still managed to score a point, even if his performance wasn't great over the course of the weekend. Lewis Hamilton started the sprint in 5th, finished 7th, started the race in 5th, finished 8th. I have gone for a 6 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton for this weekend. One of the worst weekends Mercedes as a team have had for quite some time. They just got it plain and simply wrong, because both him and Russell were struggling, suffering with tyre wear, slow on the straights. almost everything you don't want around Brazil, they had. It wasn't like it was bad driving from Hamilton. I was a bit critical, I'd say, for leaving the door open for Alonso. Not that he would have been able to keep Fernando at bay anyway, but he doesn't know at that point. He was very much looking in his mirrors the entire time, the entire weekend, both in the sprint where we thought, they were forced into a strategy they didn't really want. But then actually it turned out to be a strategy of 24, 25 laps on the softs that translated into the race as well, because the soft tyres were the best thing for most of the teams. Yeah, 6 out of 10. It's one of those, I think none of us expected Hamilton to have that kind of weekend at Brazil especially.
No, definitely not. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton. I think he's done a decent enough job to get some points when considering how bad that car how bad that car was. And I think it is down to setup. And of course, you can argue that the drivers contribute to that setup in that practice session, but it's quite clear that the Mercedes was just very, very washed. Quite frankly, an atrocious weekend for Mercedes, and the car was really bad. To pick up a 7th and 8th is actually not all that bad considering how horrific it was.
George Russell started the sprint in 4th, finished 4th, started the race in 8th, did not finish.
I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for George as well. It's a lower 7 than Hamilton. I think the reason it is good is because I think his sprint was very good considering, and actually like a Uno reverse card of what we expected after Mexico, that George would be the one to lose time. I think he was unlucky in the main race that he looked like he could potentially have taken the fight to Hamilton. It's obviously very hard to pass. And then I don't think it's a surprise at all that his car just overheated because he was stuck behind Hamilton for so long. And I'm amazed that Mercedes didn't at least try a switch and then maybe switched it back at the end, because his pace looked pretty decent.
I've also gone for a 6 out of 10, so the same as Lewis Hamilton for me here for George Russell as well. Had a great sprint, really showed some brilliant promise, but then in the race, obviously it didn't go his way as much. The setup again, very, very wrong. Of course, the drivers have some sort of input to the setup as well. And so they both got it wrong in free practice. And George looked great in the sprint, of course, made up a couple of positions, but then obviously fell back with all the problems that car's been having. But still a very solid 4th. But yeah, the race didn't look like it was going to go particularly well. And then DNF'd. Carlos Sainz started the sprint in 9th, finished 8th, started the race in 7th. Finished 6th. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz. Quite a quiet weekend, I would say. Of course, had a difficult qualifying, which caused for quite a difficult race for him as well. Yeah, just a few points picked up. Came back through, obviously, past both Mercedes, which was lovely to see from my perspective. It wasn't like a particularly exciting weekend for Carlos Sainz, but I think he executed from the positions he was in to a pretty good standard.
Yeah, gone for a 7 out of 10 as well. Sainz's drive was solid but not spectacular. He's not challenging Leclerc on pace, and then he's just picked up some decent points. He's not done anything particularly incredible, but I think one of Sainz's strength is he has kind of done these even when he's not got the pace. He's had like solid drives where he just picks up what the car should be doing and what he can out of the car. So good, but not great.
Charles Leclerc started the sprint in 7th, finished 5th, started the race in 2nd, did not start.
Gone for an 8 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc. Of course, so unlucky. It's a what might have been. Obviously, his sprint was brilliant. Very surprising, actually, how he did manage to hold on and do well, and tyre wear didn't seem to be that much of a problem. And then, of course, he would have started in 2nd, so you never know. I think if I'd have guessed, I'd say it'd have been behind Perez, maybe, or even in that fight with those two.
I have also gone for an 8 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc. I don't know anymore. I don't understand. I don't get why this guy is so unlucky, and why. I know why I started supporting him, but it's like the Interstellar meme. I'm smashing on the window, trying to tell myself not to pick Ferrari and Charles Leclerc and Michael Schumacher maybe. Well, Michael Schumacher had a good career, but yes, an 8 out of 10 for Charles. It was a solid enough sprint, but they were sacrificing. Ferrari were literally sacrificing the sprint for the race, and the race was ended in the barrier on the formation lap for Charles Leclerc. Sergio Perez started the sprint in 3rd, finished 3rd, started the race in 9th, finished 4th. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for Sergio Perez. this weekend. I think it was unlucky for him. Again, in qualifying, he was looking like he was pretty good on Friday, and he was going to be somewhere towards the front of the field had it not been for Oscar Piastri going off. That was actually a really impressive lap that Perez was on until that yellow flag, because everyone around him was struggling, and yet Perez was actually delivering to a level of which we would have all been very, very impressed had he been able to finish that lap. That put him on the back foot, but he still came through, was fighting Alonso, would have obviously been, I think, an 8 had he finished third. It was a decent-ish weekend for Perez. There was glimpses of that old kind of form, especially in qualifying where he's lacked so much. So I'm not going to be too harsh on him this weekend. So yeah, 7 out of 10.
Also gone for a 7 out of 10. It was a drive and a weekend really where we saw he should have beaten Fernando because he's driving a Red Bull, but also I think he was so much more impressive than he has been, and his pace looked so much better that this is exactly what he should be doing. I think if he'd done this kind of weekend every Grand Prix, there would be absolutely no talk of replacing him at all if he was just doing this every single weekend, because he doesn't need to be close to Max. Like, it's not amazing, but he doesn't need to be amazing.
Max Verstappen started the sprint in second, finished first. Started the race in first, finished first.
It's another 10 out of 10 for Max. It's hard to really talk about this one because it was him just making it look like very easy. Yeah, just controlled the race, and I can't believe how many races he's won this year. It's absolutely insane. There's like 21 now if you include the sprints as well. Absolutely bonkers.
It certainly is. I've also gone for a 10 out of 10 for Max Verstappen. I genuinely feel like I say the same thing every single week, but that's because we see the same thing every single week of almost perfection. The confidence of the man to literally just run one set of hard tyres in practice for pretty much, I think, the whole practice session, and then still was able to be just as quick as we ever see him. They managed to nail clearly the setup, unlike teams like Mercedes. Taking the lead into turn 1, that's no easy feat. We saw second place on the grid getting pretty poor starts. Lando on the restart didn't get a great getaway, and Hamilton was challenging him into turn 1. Verstappen, don't care, mate. Don't care about the fact I'm not on the racing line. I'm still going to get a great start. I'm going to bleed off the brakes a little bit. I'm going to take the lead. What more can you give than a 10 out of 10? So well done, Max. Congratulations once again for your 17th victory of the year. Right, who is our P1? I wonder who our P1 is, because my P1 is Fernando Alonso. Well done, Fernando. I'm getting in before Tommy can start sweating about him a bit more. But yes, Fernando, so impressive. I think a very close second comes Lando Norris. But yes, Fernando Alonso for me, just stunning.
I've gone for Fernando Alonso because the driving, I've said everything I need to say really. Just the fact that he showed it all really with the racecraft and the defensive driving, and the fact that he's just he's not only got amazing pace, he's just got one of, if not the best racing brain out there. He's still got it, and yeah, it's lovely to see.
And that is it. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening to this very long F1 driver ratings for the Brazilian Grand Prix. I hope you enjoyed it. We also need to let you know, before we go, that our second P1 live show date has sold out. London has gone. The only date left now is Manchester on the 3rd of December. So if you want to come along and see me and Tommy in the flesh talking Formula One waffle, then get your tickets, because they are going. We did tell you, all right? We told you. And yeah, we'll see you very soon. Thank you, everybody. Lots of love. Bye!
Bye!